But yeah, I mean, we're talking real life. We're talking to real people about real things, discussing real problems, coming up with real solutions. This is our life. This is my life. This is real life. Thank you so much for tuning in with another episode of The Real Life with Cornelius Lindsey. I'm sitting here again with my friend, my brother, Bishop Nim.
Yo.
Bishop Antwain Jackson. Man, we just had a powerful episode about what it looks like about going into ministry. Now I want to talk about church planting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have some guys who I absolutely love. I talk to on the side about their experience with church planting. You know, I have a heart for men who are out there who are planting churches. Yes. I have a big heart for that. I love to just go down and serve them. I don't need them to give me anything. I just want to go and serve them because I know how hard it is. I know how it was when I got started, how it was like pulling teeth to get people to help. Yeah. But the reason why I say that is because one of the only men years ago when I got started in pastoring and planting a church, one of the only men who was willing to help me was Antwain, this man I'm sitting with. I remember coming down to St. Louis, and I said to you, man, I'm not sure how to do this. Yeah. And you handed me, I don't know if you remember this, you handed me the, I don't know what you call it, the usher's card? Uh-huh. It was a connections card.
Connect card, yeah.
And a connect card. And you showed me that connect card, and I was like, man, you know, this is so awesome. And then you sent me the file.
That's right.
Over the computer so I can just put my logo. You're like, man, just use it.
Right.
And I thought, is this real?
Yeah.
Like, man, I can't tell you how much that meant to me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what help looked like because I was so used to being told no. Mm. And you really helped me back then. And now I have a heart to help. And I just pray this episode is going to be good for you. So Bishop, if you could, I mean, tell us a little bit, for those who didn't get a chance to listen to the last episode, tell us a little bit about yourself and then kind of go in and give us that story of how you started your church planting experience.
Yeah. Well, guys, y'all can't see the tears in my eyes, but they're really there. It really moves me to think back on the times where the Lord just, you know, used me and just made me available,
right?
You know, to be able to help people. It's such a blessing. But I'm Antwain Jackson. I'm the senior pastor of the Equation Church in St. Louis, Missouri. We started the church 7 years ago. We actually started in one of St. Louis's most popular nightclubs, the Ambassador.
I remember that.
Yeah, you came and preached for me.
I did. Yep. I remember that. I put the grapes and I was throwing the grapes
That's right.
And I said, I'm not going to finish. I said, Bishop would never have me back again. And since then, he hasn't. I love it.
He's a busy man.
I'm just playing. Go ahead, Bishop. Go ahead.
He's a busy man. Literally, we started in this nightclub, and it really was a heart to reach the unchurched, the de-churched, and those that were tired of church as usual. Uh-huh. And the space that I was in was I was actually really tired of church as usual, and now I'm coming to realize that it was religion that I was tired of. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to create a place and a gathering for people like myself to come into an authentic relationship with God. And God has done so many wonderful things through the church. Here we are, 7 years, through the great, through the good, through the bad. Still here, fulfilling the mission of love God, help people, and change the world.
Right.
And God's really used our church as such a place of hope and has given us so much influence with other young church planters literally across this entire country. So it's been a joy, man.
So, okay, I know it's been a joy, but in the beginning stages of church planting, what was that? Well, let me ask you this question first. How did you get started?
Well, I got started with literally a call from God. I never wanted to be a church planter. I literally was wrestling because the Lord was just speaking to my heart about starting a church.
Right.
And it was something that I really denied because I was fiercely loyal to my church at the time.
Right.
And I didn't really think that I would ever do this.
Right.
So God had to nag me.
Right.
The truth be told, it was him really nagging my heart, my spirit, and speaking to me through dreams and visions, but really just everyday conversations with the Father, with him. You know, you're supposed to do this, start this church, you know, and more and more. But I started this church really with the time of meeting with my core team, we met for an entire year in my living room.
Wow.
Yep. We called it on Sundays mini church. And so we literally sat in my living room every Sunday and just cast vision at 12 o'clock. We ate donuts and we just chilled and talked. The little kids were in my little girl's room, and then the teenagers were in my teenager's room. And I was actually explaining to the church this past Sunday, we just elevated a new youth pastor that's over our entire children's and teens program. Mm-hmm. And when I walk in our building and see we have a children's space and a teen ministry space in the gym, it takes me all the way back 7 years ago when I'm sitting in my living room.
Isn't that amazing?
And it's crazy that that's actually manifested. That has actually come to pass. So we sat in my living room and we dreamed and cast vision and talked about what our church would look like. And then on Wednesday we did DNA labs, and it was
I remember DNA labs. I remember DNA labs.
Yes. And it was an acronym for developing new ambassadors through life-altering Bible studies. So we called it DNA labs, and this was our open meeting for people to come find out more about our church. But it was still a time of vision casting. I didn't try to teach hermeneutics or anything.
Right.
It was a time of vision casting for our church, and God just started sending the people to help us continue to build the church.
Right.
And we did that for the first year. So we didn't do services. We didn't go get an organ and the keys and no. We needed to build community, and I think that's important. For a guy that wants or a lady that you feel like you're called to build a church, you need a support system. You can't do this alone.
Right. And this is good that you and I are doing this, because on the opposite side of that, I don't like to think I had a support system. Mm-hmm. I had you to call.
Right.
But honestly, Bishop, looking back, I think you were the only one I had to call. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have that support system. We had our first service after my wife's first Pinky Promise Women's Conference.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was like, okay, we're gonna have church. Yeah. And I was thrown off because we had about 800 people at that first service that Sunday. Mm-hmm. And then the next Sunday, we had it in a movie theater.
Yeah.
And, that movie theater. But we had it in a movie theater where it was rat infested.
Yeah.
It smelled like mold. And it was hard. It was very humbling. And our first service, when I thought, we're not going to have enough seats. Mm-hmm. And I only see 40 people in there. And I thought, well, what happened? Maybe they got lost.
Yeah.
Then the next Sunday, it went down to about 12. Then the next Sunday, it was just my family and maybe 2 other people.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, okay, God, and I don't know if you ever wrestled with this, but I know I did. Am I really called to this?
Oh my!
Because these people ain't coming, so obviously you must be telling me that I'm on the wrong path here. So God, I need for you to speak to me. Have you ever dealt with anything like that?
Yes. You know what I've learned about the first couple of years of being a pastor?
Please.
Is that the first 1 and 2 years of being a pastor is actually God teaching you.
That's good.
He's actually building you before he's building the congregation.
That's good.
And it took me some time to really see that God was really developing me.
Yeah.
And so God had to do some work on me to make me ready. It really wasn't until I was year 3.5, 4 in that I actually felt like a pastor.
I actually, I know what you're talking about.
Like I was doing pastor things.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But I didn't feel like a pastor until maybe year 3.5, 4.
Yeah.
And so I saw where God was really building me, working on my character, my disciplines. Where, my home life wasn't the best. My eating wasn't the best. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of things about my life that was completely out of whack.
Right.
And so I feel like God was using those first few years to really develop me.
Right.
Think of your baby.
Right.
Do you expect her to do particular things at 1, 2 years old? Mm. And I have found that I was putting too much pressure on myself as a 1, 2 year old church. I'm expecting my church to operate like I've seen somebody else. Well, yeah, they've been doing it for 10 years.
Right.
Yeah, they've been doing it for 20 years. So, yeah, I could expect that from them, but this is a new baby.
Right.
Sometimes I got to crawl.
That's good. Brother. My goodness. It really resonates me with me when you say, it took you to get to that certain point when you realized that you were actually a pastor. Mm-hmm. I think I told my wife the other day, like, I'm really a pastor. Like I have a real church. I can't quit.
That's right.
Like people have actually moved here to do
Yes.
this. Like this is kind of serious. Okay, God, I'm fully all the way in. But in those beginning years, there were so many times where I felt like, you know what, God, there's no way you could have called me to this.
Yeah.
I'm tired.
Mm-hmm.
I quit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done. You can have it. You can hang it up. I never forget. I sat down with a pastor out of Arkansas. I think it was. I think it was Little Rock, Arkansas, and I was in my first year of ministry, and I was kind of sharing with him some of my frustrations. And he looked at me and he said, "Son," I think he'd been pastoring for about 20 years. You know, when you get over, you have a certain hump. You son to everybody.
That's right.
You're a son.
That's right.
Son.
Mm-hmm.
When you're building a church, you got to look at it like this: Christ is the foundation. He said, and then God will send certain people to come along to help you build up, help you put up the walls.
Yeah.
And he said, but it's very deceptive because, where you're building the wall, you got to put up the scaffolding. Mm. And the only thing about the scaffolding is that you got to take that scaffolding away when you really start putting that reinforcement to the wall. So you really don't know what you got.
Wow.
Until you remove the scaffolding.
That's so good.
And it's hard because you assume that the same people who help you put up the wall and the scaffolding are the same people going to help you paint the walls.
Yeah.
And the ones who came to paint the walls will be the same people going to help you put down the carpet.
Right.
And the ones that you put down the carpet will be the same people to help you go and buy the furniture. Yep. And the people who bought the furniture will complain about the furniture right. and hate you for the furniture you bought. Go out and talk about what you did when you bought it. Then a whole new crowd will come in. We've in the years I've been pastoring, and you can tell me if this has been similar for you. I think I probably have 4 or 5 turnovers.
Oh my, yes.
Where when I say turnover for the new church planters that are out there, when I say turnover, I'm talking about it wasn't a mass exodus, but it was like the leader or some of the core people who you had, they kind of just disappeared. Right. And he just left.
Yep. Don't marry your launch team.
Oh.
Yeah. That's real. That's real talk. This is real pastor talk. You can love your launch team,
right?
But don't marry your launch team.
Now, what is the difference in that? Like, how can I love them without marrying them?
Well, I think it's important to realize that people are called to you for a season and a reason. And as a leader, and I think it's also important for us to realize that we have to always think with the sending mentality anyway.
Right.
So I think as we think with the sending mentality, we're always letting people know that some people will shift in for certain seasons of our church, and then they will shift out.
Right.
And so it's not that people are bad that they have to go or that there's been any issue, but they have done their work.
Right.
As a contractor, when he's come in and he's laid the foundation, he may not have to stay for laying the drywall.
Right.
Because he's done his part. And so I've done it, and I tried to keep that a part of our mentality at the church. That, hey, once your assignment has been completed with our church, my hope as a pastor that you stay here forever. I want to birth you, marry you, and bury you.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? I want to do that. But truly, because God has different calls for other people's lives, some people may just be shifted in by God to do particular things in the foundation.
Right.
And then they shift out.
So when those people come, it's like, I know in the beginning, I was conflicted because I wanted so bad because we love them.
Yep.
And we're compassionate.
Yep.
And we actually care about the people. We care about what we get entangled with your family.
Yes.
We get entangled with your life. Like I was at your graduation.
Yes.
And now it's like that changes.
Yep.
And for those church planners who are like, man, I know what that feels like because I feel like the people who've been here with me, they've kind of left.
Yep.
And now I feel hurt by it. And it could be those who we've been in it where they left you and then they talked about you and they spread your name all around. And it's like, but because in the beginning you were grand supreme.
Yes,
you were the best pastor in the world.
That's it.
But as soon as you told them no, or you did something they didn't agree with, they didn't like, then they left. How do those pastors? How do they deal with that?
Well, I think it's important that you realize that as a pastor, one of your greatest challenges as a pastor is to stay vulnerable. That's going to be one of your greatest challenges as a pastor.
And why do you need this? And why is staying vulnerable so important?
Because you will have ample amount opportunities to be protective because you will get hurt.
Right.
Most people don't realize that anytime you've invested your life into somebody else's life and they leave, it hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts for a parent when their kid goes off to college.
Right.
I've invested all of my life in you, my money in you. Now I'm not going to see you.
Right.
And I think that people have to realize that for pastors, we see a lot of people. See, it's one of us and it's multitude of you guys.
Right.
It's a multitude of you guys and it's one of me. And I have so much emotion. I have so much stamina. I have so much. So when you have other people coming and other people going and you see people leave that you've invested your life in, that does hurt.
Yeah.
We do wish them the best because we're loving people.
Right.
But, if I've invested my life, I would want you to invest your life back into mine.
Right.
That's just the humanity of it.
I remember, in the first beginning stages of our church, we had that family style type of ministry where I was right there in the mix of. I remember calling you some years back, and I remember telling you maybe been a year and a half, maybe I think about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I said, you was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm here hanging out with some people from the church," and you said. You said, "Well, what's going on?" And they were all at the church, and back then I had that family style of ministry where I got finished preaching a sermon on Sunday morning. I left from church, dropped my family off at home, went to the grocery store. I paid through $300 in groceries. Came back home. I baked chicken, fried chicken, collard greens. I made these big meals. People from the church would come over and we would eat. And it'd be a big spread, and I would serve them all, and sometimes I would go to bed and without eating because I had exerted so much after preaching. Because preaching is an 8-hour job.
There you go.
And I feel like I gave so much. I had this family style type of ministry, but now pulling back away from that in this transition, because like it was Jethro who goes to Moses and says, "What are you doing? You're gonna kill yourself.
Yep.
You got to come out of that and stop. You can't fully lead them." In the front because you're still trying to lead them in the middle.
Yes.
And that transition has come where now you have to lead them from the front. I know you've gone through that transition. Yes. What does that transition look like from going from family style ministry from now saying, I need to now lead you from the front?
Yeah, because you realize that, as your church grows, it has to take on more organization. And it requires from you a greater freer mind to be able to make clear decisions. And when you have people energy in your space all the time, it causes, because anytime people are around, pastors are on. Right. See, this is what people don't realize, that it could be one of the members or 5 or 10, but just the fact that I shepherd you, I'm on. Right. And so that is requiring energy. It's almost like putting your phone and turning it on and not having it plugged into the charger. It is going to drain. Right. And so I think it's important that there is enough care, or you teach the people to care enough about your energy and your health to realize that there are times when you need to be able to pull away to be able to lead them forward. Right. And most people think that it's personal when pastors start to pull away. Actually, it's for your benefit. Right. The more rested I am, the more focused I am, the more I'm able to spend time with Jesus, the greater quality of words you get, the greater organization you get in the church. I don't know anybody that wants to be a part of a church that's not growing. So that means you would have to allow me to position the church to be able to do so. Right. So where maybe you had access, I'm still approachable. Maybe access just changes. Right. But it does not mean that I've changed in me being approachable. I still love people. That doesn't change. But I think that sometimes we haven't done enough education about educating people about the role of the pastor and just the personal life of a pastor, so that they can realize the benefit of when the organization starts to turn and the church begins to grow. Hey, well, here's our responsibility too. Well, if pastor invites us over, maybe let's not stay so late. Right. Or, hey, if pastor invites us over, maybe we'll bring food.
And maybe we'll clean up after.
Or maybe we'll clean up after ourselves.
That never happened in my house.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll take on the responsibility because now the relationship is mutual. Right. what happens is when we start churches, we are fathers,
right?
And we look at them like our babies,
right?
And we coddle them and we do all of those things, but then they start to grow up and expect that same treatment,
right?
And we wouldn't expect it out of our natural kids, and we just have to learn how to teach them as spiritual kids. Now you have responsibility,
right?
That I've grown you up.
So for the pastor who's listening and saying, I've gone through that transition, but it's still rough for me, and I still feel like kind of throwing it all away. I still have those days where I feel like quitting, and it's hard. I don't feel like I have that help. And let's just, I don't want to send this just to the millennial church planner, but to that guy who feels like, well, I'm young, I'm doing my best to plant this as best as I can, but I don't feel like I have the help that I need, because I feel like maybe the older generation has kind of cast me off. They don't really believe in me. I don't have the funds. I don't have this. All I have is vision, a mission, and a word from God that I believe has been validated a couple of times, but I'm still losing hope. What do you have to say to those guys?
Well, I would want to say to you is stir up your entrepreneur. Stir up your creativity. Don't let problems make you think it's impossible.
Right.
And what you've had to do and what I've had to do is the uniqueness of my ministry have been as a result of the challenges.
Right.
Not that I'm any kind of special.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? I don't feel like I'm any kind of special. I just feel like my challenges have caused me to have to think very uniquely and creatively.
Right.
It was the challenge of not being able to get any more people in my house that led us to the club. It wasn't me being creative about going to seek out a nightclub.
Right.
So sometimes we're looking at our problems as something that will create impossibilities, when the truth is, if you would just learn how to just switch on your creativity and seek for answers, you probably will progress your ministry past where you are. And so I think that most church planners, if you're listening, you need to ask God for creative ingenuity and to not give up when it gets hard.
Right.
And to really find, well, if I don't have the money to go buy chips, can I get donations for chips? If I don't have a place to meet, where can I meet? What are my options? If you can't find a church building, can I meet in a school? Can I meet in a club? Right. Can I meet in a garage? Just exhaust yourself trying to find answers before you quit.
Right. I love that. And I want to piggyback off of that for the pastor who's listening and saying, I found it rough. I understand. I hear what you're saying about not quitting. But I've invested so much in the activity of ministry that I've kind of lost myself. I've lost the reason as to why I'm supposed to be doing this anyway. And I've turned this more into activity rather than identity. Yeah. I don't even know who I am anymore. No. I don't know who I am in Christ. I've kind of let the people dictate me as Moses. Yeah. And instead of speaking to a rock, I'm hitting it. Yep. And I don't know what to do. Bishop, talk to him.
Well, Pastor, if you find yourself in that position, then you need to find you another pastor. Ooh. Because you need to ensure that somebody can identify with you. Mm-hmm. Because if you think that you are alone, you're not. Yeah. And if you need to reach out to me, you can feel free to do that. That's my niche. I love helping pastors in the most vulnerable time in their life because I was there. Right. And you have to realize and accept that a lonely, vulnerable, and feeling like quitting feeling you will have often. Mm-hmm. Most likely you'll have those on Mondays. Yes, yes, that's the truth. So it's not something that's uncommon. Right. But I also think that if you've lost yourself, then create a new one. Mm-hmm. See, don't just accept defeat. Right. You see what I'm saying? Like I've been through several reinventions. Mm-hmm. I have changed my body. I've lost weight. I have grown a beard. I've grown hair. I've cut it off. I've changed myself in so many different times because I don't define myself by a particular season of my life. Exactly. So don't close the chapter. Right. Turn it over. Mm-hmm. So most of us are so busy trying to relive the glory days. Mm-hmm. You know, I want what was. No, don't do that to yourself. Start afresh. Start anew, and realize that the feelings that you have, you're not alone. You're really not alone. Right. But you can take control of it.
And that's the last thing that I want us to kind of tackle here is, I know as a pastor, you've endured hardship.
Oh my!
You've endured struggle.
Mm-hmm.
You've endured the crisis of, not necessarily identity, but the crisis of with family and
Yes.
you've been hit on every side. Some of it which you've stated has been brought on because that was
Yep.
what you brought on. That was by your own decisions. But
Yep.
even going with that, you still stand strong
Mm-hmm.
as you still stand strong as a leader,
Yeah.
and as a pastor. Speak to that pastor out there who feels like, you know what, I feel like I have so much against me now that I don't feel like I can keep going on, or maybe I don't feel like I'm valuable enough that the calling that God has given me is still validated.
Yeah. Well, if you're that pastor, you really have to remind yourself of the mission. When I went through the worst time of my ministry's life to date, I really had to pull away and spend some time with the Lord. I flew all the way across the country to Silverstone, Oregon, literally the rainforest, out in a cabin. No internet, no cell, in a cabin where I had to walk up this little dirt road to go use the restroom. Couldn't go out at night because of bears, snakes. So I literally isolated myself, and I went out there with my Bible. And I told the Lord I needed to know if you truly called me to do this, because if you don't speak to me, I'm not going to do this. Well, I'm reading through Romans chapter 1, and Paul is talking about, hey, I'm an apostle and I've been called and set aside for this special work. And I underlined it, and I closed the Bible, and I went in the room and I laid down, and I had my phone. So I went to the Starbucks app. Everybody knows I'm a Starbucks dude. That's like coffee is that's my thing. It's God is breathing on coffee. But I opened the Starbucks app for some odd reason, and there was a song in there. And the song actually was from Coldplay, which is very weird. So, I had no expectation. Mm-hmm. Okay, so realize why this is so crazy. I knew it was God. I had no expectation. And I download the song and I'm listening to it and I'm loving just the vibe of it. I'm an introvert, so I love particular kind of music and melodies and moods that it says. And so it gets to this part in the song, and then there's this nice long break than any other song I've heard. It's a nice break. Then it goes, these are the words. This, I guess, is to tell you you're chosen out from the rest. And I sat up, and tears just scrolled down my face, because God just confirmed what I was reading in Scripture when he was talking to the Apostle Paul. Wow. He has separated him and called him out for this special work. And then I go in here and I just literally download this song, and I hear those lyrics, and it literally just resonated with the confirmation that I heard from the word first. You see what I'm saying? Jesus. And so for God to confirm that in me, it strengthened me to know that God still had his hand on me, even in the worst times of my life. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that I've learned to do is to use my worst time to ensure that nobody else ever has to go through it. Mm. So now my ministry is taking on a different kind of idea, because now I'm showing people my scars so they don't have to have them. And so you're, again, like I said, you can still use problems even for the benefit of the gospel, because of somebody that's struggling with it and needs your story.
Woo!
Yeah.
My goodness.
They need it.
Man, Bishop, I needed your story. Mm-hmm. I did. I mean, the same way I started this, same way I want to end this. I forget how many years ago it was. About 6, 7, I don't know, years ago. I needed the story.
Yeah.
I needed your strength.
Yeah.
And even though I believe and I feel like I knew God called me, I still needed that. And I say that to say, for the pastor who's out there, don't continue to isolate yourself from other preachers and assume that guys like us are not around, because we are.
We are here.
It's just that many of us, we're so introverted that we're nervous to reach out. Then as a pastor, you're so used to everybody leaving your life that you're like, maybe if I reach out, but then maybe
Right.
maybe they might be crazy. So you never know. But I say it to say you never know the blessing that can come from somebody, and from the message that you have and how God uses you. Because I mean, God has used Bishop so many times in my life to help me, especially just to be like, man, you can do this.
Yeah,
you can do it. Especially when I'm like, you know what, these people in this church, they can have it. They
right.
can have this whole thing. They can have it. But Bishop, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your life. I appreciate your ministry. You've been a blessing to me. But if you could, to the people who are listening, let them know how they can get in contact with you, all that kind of good stuff.
Well, you can find me on all social media at Antwain Jackson, ANTWAIN Jackson, on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'll be launching a new personal ministry here real soon, and you can find me there at AntwainJackson.com, or you can find me now at EquationChurch.tv.
And if you're in St. Louis, make sure that you visit the Equation Church. You can get more information about that at EquationChurch.tv. You can listen to Bishop Antwain's explosive teaching. I tell you something, man. It's something different between teaching and preaching. This man's a teacher, but then preaching is that teaching with passion. And Antwain definitely packs a punch. So Antwain, I appreciate you being here. I thank you so much for it. I can't wait to have you back. Well, I pray that this episode blessed you. With everything that you do, make sure that you stay real. Thank you for tuning in to Real Life with Cornelius Lindsey. God bless you, and I just love you so much. Make sure you share this with all your friends. God bless. Goodbye. Thank you so much for tuning in to Real Life with Cornelius Lindsey. Hey, if you get an opportunity, please check out my website, www.corneliuslindsey.com. Until next time, remember, Jesus is Lord. God bless you.